Hello, my name is Jack Fulmer, and I am a type 1 diabetic. Now, the question that I get asked the most is, why do you have such a hard time going to sleep? And the short answer for that is that I'm a type 1 diabetic. And the long answer is this video. Now, I'm going to break it up into three parts. First is logistical, second is physical, and third is emotional. Now, logistical reasons why it's difficult to go to sleep with diabetes is because you are in charge of balancing your blood sugar, of trying to keep it in good range. Every time that you eat something, every time that you give yourself an insulin shot, this has an effect on your blood sugar. And during the day, it's not as big a deal because, it's still important, but there's always you're aware and able to detect that something's wrong, or you're going to be doing another blood test in an hour or so. So having a, window of an hour or two where you don't know what your blood sugar is doing isn't as big a deal. But before bed, that is a time where you're looking at, okay, I'm going to sleep between 6 and 8 hours. That's going to be a long time where my blood sugar is going to be able to just do whatever it wants without me being any the wiser. And so you want to be sure that your blood sugar is nice and stable before you commit to going to sleep. And the biggest problem with being successful in getting it to be stable like that is the fact that everything in type 1 diabetes takes time. So you want your blood sugar to be as close to 150 as possible. That's a nice normal range. For me, going to sleep, I sometimes like it to be a little bit closer to 200 just because it gives me that extra safety barrier. Now, if your blood sugar gets below 70, then that is a low blood sugar number. You start to get that side effects of it being low, and that will be in the physical section. But regardless, you want to bring your blood sugar up because it is not safe for it to get too low, because you can then pass out, have a seizure, need to be revived. That usually happens when your blood sugar drops to around 20. If your blood sugar gets upwards in the high 200s to 300 to 400, that's a high blood sugar, and that also creates physical side effects and is dangerous in the longer term. It does not have the same immediate short-term peril that a low blood sugar does, but it can and worsen your overall health and cause eye problems and dental problems and amputations and all sorts of things, eventually leading to death. So with these two extremes that you're trying to thread, you have a lot riding on your decisions at this time of night, and a lot of responsibility, because your primary care provider isn't there to help you at that time of night. You are the one that knows your blood sugar best and can try your best to account for all the variables that come into play. And here's where the logistics really start to amplify. So if your blood sugar is low, you need to take a snack to bring it up. It takes usually around 20 minutes between 20 and 40 minutes for a snack that you've taken to register and have an effect on your blood sugar. It can sometimes take as much as an hour and a half depending on how much protein the snack has. But so if your blood sugar is low, you would take a relatively fast-acting snack and you would wait and do another blood test in a half hour, 20 minutes. If you need to do several of these, well, suddenly there's an hour right there of you trying to incrementally inch your blood sugar back up into a safe range so that you can go to sleep. So it's already an hour later than you were originally planning on. Now, what if it's high? And this is the scenario that takes up the most time, because when your blood sugar is high, you need to give yourself an insulin shot. But insulin doesn't act instantly. Even though it's called fast-acting insulin, it still takes time to be absorbed by your body and to lower your blood sugar. So if your blood sugar is 300 and you give yourself a correction shot, it could take up to an hour and a half minimum to a lot of times closer to the full 3 hours for that insulin to fully have an effect and get your blood sugar dropping. And you need to understand that that correction that you give, that insulin shot, is based on a ratio. And that ratio assumes that you are at a relatively stable, 300 or so. For me, it's a correction of 1 unit for every 50 over 150. But you see, if you're 300 and going up, then that correction that you gave will not be adequate. And so you would need to wait an hour and a half to 3 hours to see, did this insulin shot bring my blood sugar down far enough into safe range? And so right there, 3 hours, that is put your bedtime significantly later than you were originally hoping. And you run the risk of, because there's uncertainty as to what of a number of different things is causing that high blood sugar, there are times where it isn't necessarily as the ratio that you have might be a little bit too much, because that intends to bring you back down to 150. But you can see, if you're slightly off with your estimate, suddenly then that shot could bring you too low, and then you need to have a snack and bring it back up. And so on top of the 3 hours to bring it back down, then there's 20 to 40 minutes to an hour to bring it back up, and it's just bouncing up and down between these two extremes. One of the worser case situations that has cost me many nights and kept me up for sometimes 12 hours is where you completely bounce back and forth between the two extremes by having an extremely high blood sugar or an extremely low blood sugar. Because when your blood sugar is extremely low, you usually, at least for me, when it's late at night, I'm not going to think, okay, my blood sugar's 45. I know that each snack of 20 carbs should take me up X amount, so I'll take this much snack and it should be fine. It's not that precise a science. There's just too many variables, and in that case you really want to spike it and make sure it gets safe, because you're dangerously close to it being too low and it's just too stressful. So you want to get it up quick. But by getting it up quick, you know that then you're going to need to sort out later the ramifications of getting it up too fast, and that's the possibility that then might go high. So, an hour or to see how much of an effect the snacks you have, and that boom, now it's quickly climbing to 300, so I need to give another correction and bring it back down, and then maybe you bring it back down too far. Or what frequently happens is it's high and going higher, so I give a correction, it brings it down on a little bit but not enough, and so it was going upwards or above 300, and the full shot I gave only brought it back down to just 300, and so I need to give another shot. But when you're having insulin that isn't fully working, there's other variables that you have to account for, and you have to try to hedge your bet and think, well, all right, is this insulin not working because just of my emotions or hormones or different things or exercise I had during the day, or other things are causing these blood sugar fluctuations, and so it's things that I can't account for? Or is it actually an indication that the insulin itself may have gotten too hot or too cold and been damaged to the point where it's not functioning at its full efficiency? Or it's the possibility that if you wear an insulin pod like I do, those pods vary from how effective they are by just fractions of a degree, but it adds up. And sometimes, because of the fact that it's sticking a needle into your body, if that injection site is getting sore or swelling from irritation, that can impede the flow of insulin and make it absorb slower. And so you sometimes are aware of the possibility that that correction you gave, you might not have gotten all of it, and so then you need to give more. But then if you end up giving too much more, you don't guess properly, then it goes low. And again, these things can be with 3 hours per shot to wait to see it have its full effect, it just keeps you up all night. And there's just so many things to keep track of. And I really wish that it was as exact a science and as frequently where you could just see, my blood sugar is this. I know I need to take exactly this amount of snack and I'll be fine. Exactly this amount of insulin and I'll be fine. Occasionally you get lucky and it does that, but not always. And while you can sometimes set a timer to wake yourself up, an hour to 3 hours later to see what your blood sugar is doing, and it is a difficult thing to feel that you're doing your best job and feel confident enough to be able to go to sleep when you know that there's still so much going on and you don't know whether your blood sugar is going to need radical adjustments in the next hour to an hour and a half. But even in those instances where maybe you can go to sleep, you're fairly confident and you believe you have a good enough understanding of what variables are in play, well then that's where the physical difficulties come into play. And what the physical difficulties are is that when your blood sugar is low, it has a physical effect on the body. For me, it makes me feel like I'm starving, I start to sweat, tremble, I just feel awful. And even after I've had a snack and my blood sugar has gotten up into good range, sometimes it can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes for those side effects to go away. And then if your blood sugar is high, that's worse because it lasts for longer. So if your blood sugar is high, for me, it makes me feel almost like I'm having a minor panic attack. I just feel like my body is like this rubber band that's been stretched tight, and there's that little bit of a vibration, but also a tightness, and it just feels like my entire body is just like that. It's almost like I'm having a panic attack. And I feel super parched and just awful. And again, it can take up to an hour and a half to 3 hours sometimes for a high blood sugar to come down. And so that makes it really hard to go to sleep if you're trying to lie there and set a timer for, an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay, I'll get up then and do a blood test. Well, if your blood sugar is high, sometimes good luck even getting to sleep unless you're really tired. It's difficult. And the final thing that luckily does get better with time, but is the hardest starting out, is the emotional. And the emotional challenges with going to sleep is that when you're first diagnosed, they explain the situation to you, and they say, hey, if your blood sugar gets too low, you could die. And if your blood sugar gets too high, then you could die later. So every night at bed, you're sitting there thinking, well, great, so I have to make a choice. Do I aim a little bit higher and try to be okay with the fact that I might die earlier than I normally would have, but at least later along than die tonight if my blood sugar gets too low? And it's not necessarily always that dire, but it feels like it. It's such a difficult thing. And they tell you that you will, because of the physical reaction to being low, that if you do go low in the night, you will wake up. But that's a frightening thing to trust, that you will wake up. And I finally had maybe it was 5 or 7 years into being a type 1 diabetic, had an instance where I did go low during the night, and it did wake me up. And that was frightening, but it did give me some comfort of knowing, all right, yes, my body is sensitive enough that I will be able to wake myself up if I get too low. But before that happened, it's just not comforting to think, am I going to die in my sleep? And yes, I know that anyone could die in their sleep at any time. There's the whole prayer of, now I lay me down to sleep, if I should die before I wake, all that. But most people don't have the responsibility of understanding that their survival, while not guaranteed, has a lot to do with the choices they make. It's, I doubt that very few people are going to bed going, well, I just ate this entire bag of this type of food that I'm allergic to. I think going to sleep will be fine. It's like, no, but when you're going to sleep, you're thinking, well, gee, I had exercise earlier today. And I know that sometimes that exercise can make me low later, and I haven't seen that low happen yet. So maybe this is one of those times where the low doesn't happen, or maybe the low is, sometimes it can happen between up to 6 or 12 hours after the exercise, and it hasn't been 12 hours after the exercise. So am I going to go low in the night from that exercise? Should I maybe make my blood sugar, how low am I going to go from this? Do I need to be 250 going to sleep so that if my blood sugar drops to 100 points, I'll only be 150? Is that enough? There's just so many things to think about, and that fear is very difficult to deal with. And like I said, fortunately, that does get better with time, and I finally have a continuous monitor, which is a sensor that I wear on my arm. And whereas before I was just doing blood tests, just finger pricks, and I did that for years. And what that is you prick your finger, put the blood into a reader, and it will give you one data point. It'll say that right now your blood sugar is 130. But what does that mean? What does 130 mean? 130 is a good number during the day if you're awake. 130 is a little bit close to 100, which is a little bit close to 80, which is a little bit close to 40 if you're getting close to going to sleep. But on the other hand, and it could be 130 and going up, you just don't know. So you need to do multiple blood tests. Each of those blood tests, again, getting back into the logistics, you really need to wait at least 20 minutes to be able to get enough time between those two data points so that you can see, is it going up relatively fast or going down relatively fast or staying relatively balanced. And so, again, you can see with that 20 minutes apart. Before night, I would like to do at least 3 to 4 blood tests, just if there was any reason to worry, just because it took that long to get a clear picture. Now with a continuous monitor, what it does is it gives you one data point for about every 5 minutes, and it is constantly, as its name suggests, monitoring your blood sugar, and it will alert you with an alarm and wake you up if your blood sugar gets too high or too low during the night. And so you'd think, well, that should fix a lot of the problems, right? That should make it so that you can sleep much easier. And as is the case with most technology and things with type 1 diabetes, it makes things better. It doesn't fix them, it makes them better. None of the systems I've gotten or technologies or different stuff has ever fixed the problem, but it makes it better. In this case, it helps to get rid of a lot of the rest of that emotional concern, because I know I have this as a backup. But there's still the huge responsibility of knowing that you are responsible for your own health, and that you need to manage this and do right by it. And there's still the logistical side of it, that if my blood sugar is high, and going up especially, I can't just go to sleep. I know that the correction I give is just going to be an estimate. It's just going to be a ballpark. And when it's going up, that's not responsible for me to go to sleep. I need to stay up and see, is it starting to go down? Or might it be that the pod isn't working? Might it be any one of these number of different things? I don't want to be 300 all night. That's not healthy. And the continuous monitor doesn't help with the physical side effects. If you're high, you're going to feel awful. It's hard to get to sleep. If you're low, you're going to feel awful for a while. So it makes things better. It removes some of the variables because it at least gives you an understanding in that logistical side of things of having an arrow to show you how fast it's going up or down, which before you could only guess by seeing enough data points from finger pricks to see, okay, it's trending up or it's trending down. It makes things better. Still doesn't fix the problem. And this also doesn't touch on the just the shame that comes from being up late all the time dealing with this stuff. And this is something that I still struggle with, and this is the message that if the rest of this video is designed so that other people who don't have type 1 diabetes can understand what it's like, this is the part of the video that I would like to specifically maybe help other people who do have type 1 diabetes. Because as much as, listening to the rest of this, you could commiserate around, oh, I've had those same experiences. The thing that I would want to share is the shame of dealing with this, because there's just this feeling that I must be doing something wrong. I must not be doing a good enough job managing my type 1 diabetes if I'm up so late and having all these troubles. And it's so hard to then explain to family members the next day if, why are you getting up so late? Well, because I was up super late. And there's just this feeling that, staying up late, especially in this instance where you're waiting so much of the time, you're just waiting. It's not like you're there, slaving over reports for the office. You're just sitting there trying to keep yourself awake. And you're, watching TV, or maybe you're getting a little bit of work done or something like that. But it kind of just looks like you're just goofing around. Why are you staying up so late at night? Well, I'm staying up late at night because I'm managing my type 1 diabetes. I'm doing what I need to do to try to get my health as good as I can, and to take seriously this massive responsibility that I have. And so it's hard. And what I would ask is that you, and I'm going to try to do better at this myself, give yourself grace and respect the fact that you are doing what you need to do, that you can't make the process any faster. You can't change that logistical side of things. You can't change the fact that if it's high, it could take 1.5 hours to 3 hours to get it sorted out. And if it's low, it could take 1 hour plus to get it sorted out. And these are things you can't change. And it makes it really hard to live a normal life when you need to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, managing your blood sugar. And there's no time that is more challenging and sometimes disheartening than those late at night times, because it's just you don't have your primary care provider, your doctors or things like that to really help you. It's just you trying to make the best decisions. And even worse, you're trying to make the best decisions while tired when you are not at your best. And so of course it's going to a lot of times boil down to the safest thing to do as a type 1 diabetic is to wait for that one extra blood test, to wait that extra 20 minutes to get those few data points from the continuous monitor and get that confirmation that yes, this is indeed doing what I think it's doing, and this is the safe thing I need to do. And you have to be candid about these challenges with your friends and family so that they understand that this is a vital part of you managing your health, of you doing right by this incredible responsibility that life has handed you. And yes, it means that you can't always accomplish the things you wanted to later in the day, or that you can't always be there or to pitch in or help out the way that others would like. But this is your responsibility, and you are worth it. And I hope that you can give yourself that support and that appreciation to understand that just because your diabetes is difficult to manage doesn't mean that you're not doing everything you can, and doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's something that's very challenging, but it's something that you can and I'm sure probably are excelling at. Because with diabetes, excelling at your diabetes management doesn't equate to having perfect numbers all the time and going to bed at a normal time and everything being perfect. Excelling at your diabetes equates to you still being here, still being as healthy as you can be, and still being able to get those moments of joy, get at those extra worthwhile things done when you can, and around the 24-hour day, 7-day week job of making sure that you stay healthy. So, I know that this was a long video, but this is something that I've had years and years of experience with. especially during my teenage years, where hormones throw even more spanners into the works, and it just gets more difficult. Well, being 30 is making aspects of it a little bit simpler, but being 30 and depressed isn't, because emotions do cause your blood sugar to fluctuate as well. So, but this is I thought a lot about what would be a good video to make about diabetes, and this just felt right to do. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until next time.